I must have been living under a rock for the past 17 years of my life because I haven't seen a single Mission Impossible film. Up until now, my brain must have hated the idea of an epic spy adventure. The only thing I've had to do with this series is playing the Mario Maker level on the Wii U, but all of that changes now. So to fix that, I'm going to be watching all 6 of the films in preparation for Dead Reckoning's release in a few days. So let's not waste any more time. Join me on my journey to watch all of the Mission Impossible films. When I watched the first film, I was definitely in the right mindset for it. I thought this film would be a lot of sneaking around and doing cool shit, and I'd spent most of the day playing Ghost of Tsushima, so I was very familiar with all of that. And then it was time to actually watch the film, and it didn't just meet my expectations, it also destroyed them in the second and third act. The scene where Tom Cruise had to slowly, rappel down into a vault without getting too warm, without touching the floor, that was genuinely one of the most intense things I've ever watched in a film. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. Will he fall? Won't he fall? Who knows? I know now. This whole film felt like a bonus episode of Scooby-Doo or something, the amount of times they were ripping the masks off. Those definitely won't get abused in the later films, I bet.
I've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, and flat out deceived.
I was struggling to get into this film in the first act, but then I realised if I just turned my brain off, I'll be having a way better time, and when I did, I was like... And then during the train scene, I was like... My only problem with this film was how slow the scenes felt between all the action scenes. This film has a fairly complex plot, either that or my small brain couldn't figure it out, and it takes a while setting it up. But when this film got going, it really got going, and then it led to that nice action scene on the train that I really enjoyed. Overall, Mission Impossible 1 was a pretty fun watch, and I hope Mission Impossible 2 keeps building on the mental spy antics. I then interrupted my soon-to-be Mission Impossible streak to watch a mystery screening at Cineworld. The film turned out to be a film called Yalright, which is a really good film if you like bad films. I then reconvened with Tom Cruise. To me, Mission Impossible 2 felt like quite a downgrade compared to the first one. It felt like quite a generic spy movie with its slower paced plot and its just less out there set pieces. But what annoyed me the most about this film was the way it was edited. They just went overboard with the slow-mo effect, which contributed to the film's slow pace and just took away from a lot of the action scenes in general. It reminded me of this ad you'd get on a lot of DVDs back in the day. It was on my copy of Alvin and the Chipmunks 2, it would always make me chuckle when it came on. There are 2 things I enjoyed with this movie. The first being what I predicted earlier, the use of the masks get absolutely stupid in this film. There's a part near the end where Tom Cruise swaps place with someone and they get shot instead of him. This brought up a few questions to me, like, how does he know he's going to need one of himself and a hench bloke? Where does he store them? Where does he get them? Because I'd like a white one. The other thing I enjoyed was how great the finale looks. It was all done practically, so it looks amazing. There's a load of exploding cars and motorbike tricks, and it reminded me of Mad Max. They also realised the slow effect looks rubbish, so they didn't use it here. Also, here's a little bonus of this fire line Anthony Hopkins said.
Well, this is not mission difficult, Mr. Hunt, it's mission impossible.
If I'm honest, I don't really like this film. There just wasn't enough cool scenes, and then when there was, the slow motion effect absolutely destroyed them. So let's get on to Mission Impossible 3. I bet we can only go up from here. Mission Impossible 3 instantly wiped away all bad thoughts I was thinking about this franchise. Even in the first 3 minutes, it grabbed my attention. You've got the fella from The Big Lebowski waving a gun around and shouting at Tom Cruise about something called the rabbit's foot. That left me with so many questions, all of which are about to be answered. Now that's how you start a movie. In this film, felt like there was always something going on. It made every scene feel important and made even the slower scenes have a lot of weight to them. And because there was always something going on, there was a lot more action scenes. However, this meant there wasn't really a big blowout on the finale. Instead, that moment was carried by the emotional weight between Tom Cruise and his wife's character, which were built up very well throughout the film. This film is really fun in the moment if you're later to get swept up in it, but because it doesn't really have any big twists, it kind of gets forgotten after you've finished watching it. It was fun to see Simon Pegg in this film, even if fella is a bit underused. Then there's Philip Seymour Hoffman, who does a too good a job at portraying the villain. Like during this film, I felt like he was shouting at me, he's such a scary bloke. Let's go see what Tom Cruise is getting up to in Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. I reckon they've mastered the intros to these films now. This film starts with a bunch of agents freeing Tom Cruise from a Russian prison, and to my surprise, one of them turned out to be Simon Pegg. He's really great in this film and definitely saves a lot of the slower scenes from feeling like they're dragging on too much. In this film, the IMF gets shut down, so Tom Cruise and friends have to do a mission by themselves, which leads to some quite creative decisions. It also means they can't use the masks, which I was thrilled to see.
Finally, inner peace.
In this film, we also get a look at a bunch of different gadgets that the spies can use. They all seem really niche when they're showing them off, but they're all quite cool when they're actually used. This weirdly reminded me of Johnny English, how there's a million different gadgets in those movies, but they're all weirdly usable. Sticking to being just like Johnny English, this film was unexpectedly funny, and not just because Simon Pegg's in it. Tom Cruise does some really good physical comedy here. The bits outside the hospital and inside the prison were absolutely class. In this film, a simple plot, fun action scenes and some well-needed comedy all come together to make quite an enjoyable movie. I would say this one is on par with the first Mission Impossible film, and I can't wait to watch the next one. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. I have two words for why Rogue Nation is good. Cool stunts. This absolute madman strapped himself to a plane and held on while it took off for an entire scene, and because of it, it looks so good. And then there's a motorbike chase scene just like in Mission Impossible 2, but unlike Mission Impossible 2, it's actually good. And he also learned how to hold his breath for 6.5 minutes for a scene. Now that's something I couldn't do. So yeah, the stunts in this film, they're alright. The section in the Opera House was really intense, with all the different characters appearing out of nowhere messing with the plan. Also gave me more of my boy Simon Pegg, who just might be the greatest Mission Impossible character, right behind Tom Cruise. But the last hour or so of this movie didn't keep me that interested. While the story for this film might be better than Ghost Protocol's, it's more serious and has less action scenes, which honestly is what keeps me going in these films. It also might be because I'm watching these films so closely together, but they are all starting to blend together. For example, the IMF has been shut down twice now in back-to-back Mission Impossible films, so I'm hoping Fallout can do something to spice that up. So Fallout is the best Mission Impossible film, unless Dead Reckoning blows me away. The ending of this film recaptured that intense feeling I got right at the start of the series in the vault. It even does a fake out so you think they've failed. I actually wouldn't have been able to cope if anything bad had happened to Simon Pegg and Luther. I would not have been able to deal with that. They're my boys, I love them so much. So if they could stop having really intense moments in these films, that'd be great. Henry Cavill is an amazing surprise villain. I've always thought he can do no wrong, so when he betrayed everyone, that hit hard. I won't trust him ever again. And at this point, I'd be surprised if the stunts weren't practical. I'm just sat there in awe every time something happens as of how Tom Cruise is still able to do all of this stuff. And the run he does still perplexes me. It just doesn't look natural, but at this point, it's become a staple of the series. I don't really have anything bad to say about this film other than Jeremy Renner's not in it, but that doesn't really take away from the final film. This film has put me in an amazing mood to watch Dead Reckoning tomorrow in IMAX, so I'll see you when I've watched it. Some minor spoilers for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning here. This was a great film to see in cinema. It looked really nice and was just really cool to see all the stunts, especially during the skydive scene, where the audio went really quiet and then the speakers exploded in my cinema, and then my ears exploded. I can still hear them ringing. This film is about an AI going rogue, so I figured we'd ask ChatGPT what it thinks of this film in case it's getting any ideas. Don't worry, I think we're all safe. I actually like the fact the villain was an AI because it meant Tom Cruise and friends couldn't communicate during the missions. And of course the mask machine broke again, which I was thrilled to see. The AI would also mess with everyone from time to time, meaning the characters were kept on their toes and it just kept the film interesting. Like the other films, it takes a while to get going, but the film takes its time to introduce characters and make the plot very clear. There are some very high stakes this time, believe it or not. I reckon this is the second best Mission Impossible film, but of course, because it is just a part one, can't really judge it until we've got the second part. I've been left on a mental cliffhanger that I need resolving. It's the second film this year that's done that to me. And then you have it, we've reached the end of my Mission Impossible journey. I've now seen all 7 of the films. There's definitely a low point in the series, cough, Mission Impossible 2, but the rest of the films are pretty solid and all worth a watch. I went in expecting a bunch of action pieces, and that is what I got, but I also left with some cool stories, and I think I want to join Scientology now, because whatever they're doing to Tom Cruise, it is working. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like and a subscribe, it'd be greatly appreciated. I've got an Instagram down below if you want to go check that out. Anyway, see ya, be safe, be sound, be really, really round.